Moshi Moshi.
Hello.
I'm Zeb Ramsbotham.
And I'm Annie Ramsbotham.
And we're the Rambling Ramsbothams.
Our journey might be rambling, but we hope this podcast isn't.
We're back.
Yeah.
In
We've
our
got
cozy little room.
so much to talk about. So we went on a trip this past weekend.
I feel like that week kind of snuck up on me in terms of how much we actually did.
Well, we didn't really do much during the week. It was kind of just Friday to Sunday.
Yeah, that's true. I don't even really remember what we did last week.
You're just blown out. Well, in
a
this,
little bit, yeah, I'm tired.
In this podcast.
Well, I remember the weekend. I just don't remember the days leading up to the weekend. But
well, we're going to be talking about the weekend, the bike race hill climb that we went and did in Nagano, and staying at one of Japan's secret hot spring society ryokans, and Mount Ontake, the sacred and also active volcano, and finally, Kiso Valley's turquoise rivers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is kind of a lot.
Yeah, we really packed it all in there. Real Calvin and Hobbes moment.
Well, the days are just packed.
Yeah, they were. There's a lot going on.
So anyway, before we went from Ishikawa to Nagano, you dropped off our friend Kyle at the train station.
Yeah, so he was with us for, I guess, nearly 3 weeks, but kind of off and on. So we talked a little last time. He was doing bikepacking trips. So he did one last week, and he did a little bit of the Noto Peninsula, and he came back on Thursday. We had like a really cool dinner with him. And then, yeah, on Friday morning, he was all packed up, and we dropped him off at the station. And he had to lug his bike back onto the Shinkansen and then make it all the way back to Tokyo. But
yeah, it looked pretty painful.
I know. I think he is still flying back. Like right now we're recording this and it's Monday night, but he had like...
He's in Austria.
Yeah, he had this ridiculous, almost like 48-hour travel where, you know, it was like a 14-hour flight from here to Austria. And then he did
have an overnight
14-hour layover in Austria.
Yeah.
And then he's still got a 6-hour flight back to America. So poor guy.
We talked about how his bike box was over 200 centimeters. And he was nice enough to check one of our bikes to take it back to America for us. And it was just barely under that 200 centimeter like limit. And so we were talking last time about, well, we'll probably forward it to the airport. And so as an update, that does work, but they are pretty strict about the 200 centimeter limit. Like they measured it once we got there.
Yeah, because I measured it here in the house. And so I was like...
And she was also kind of loose with that measuring tape.
She was a little. Because I was overestimating when I was measuring it just to kind of mentally prepare myself. So every time, you know, if I measured it and I thought it was like 75 centimeters, I'd be like, okay, that's 80 centimeters. And I'll like round up.
Well, we snuck in there at 195 centimeters. But it was only 4,500 yen, which is, I mean, probably like $35 or something, which is very cheap.
Yeah, we figured out the Yamato app. So we did it online. And the lady was so pleased because we walked in and I had the little QR code to scan. And
she was pleased like, because the day before I had gone in there and made it a nightmare for her.
Yeah, harassed her.
I went through this whole process of trying to ship a very small, just like paper. It's a painting. I wanted it to be tracked. And you can't send anything, even if it's light and small like that. If you want it to be tracked, it has to be sent through Japan Post EMS or Yamato or like a shipping thing like that.
Yeah, and it's a little complicated right now because they're still blaming COVID for their slowdown with international shipping from the postal service.
Yeah, so they just don't offer the e-packet option, which
is the affordable fast one.
Yeah.
And so now they're like, oh no, you have to pay.
Yeah, so instead
$50.
of paying a reasonable like $16 to ship something small to the US, that same size package minimum is $30, which is crazy.
Ridiculous.
But anyway, we're not talking about postal issues. We're talking about our trip.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that dinner at all? Or
I mean, it was a really nice izakaya, and we got to try...
I felt like we were in America.
It was a really, really loud American guide that was next to us.
And we're obviously Americans, but if you think stereotypical American, like even in America, in a restaurant, he would have been a loud guy in the restaurant.
Yeah.
Like you would have been sitting there with your family, also probably being loud, but you all would have been like, man, that guy's loud.
Yeah, it was one of those where like in the lulls in the conversation, you're like eavesdropping on someone else because they're talking louder than everyone on your table.
We couldn't pay attention to each other. We were trying to chat, and then we would just kind of like look at each other like, oh my God.
Once that group left, the mood was totally different. It was pretty chill.
Yeah.
We tried Wagyu beef for the first
true,
time. Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, it was a cool experience. I would probably go back. It was fun.
Yeah.
The building was the main attraction and the food.
We'll put a picture up. It was very cozy.
Yeah, but
and
then
also, I realized I didn't put pictures up from last week, and so, oops. But I'll throw on some Kite Festival pictures on our story or something.
Yeah,
if you're totally.
So
curious.
we did all that, and then dropped Kyle off, and then we realized kind of that day that it was raining, and the big appeal. I took Friday off because we were going to go over to Nagano early. And I was going to pre-ride the climb on Friday and then do like a little pre-race, like they call them openers, on Saturday to get ready for the race. But it was raining all day. So we kind of realized like, well, I don't want to, I had just like washed my bike and gotten it super clean and really nice.
Seb's a fair weather cyclist now.
I mean, I kind of always have been. I don't, if I have to race in the rain, all the races I've done have been in the rain.
Except
so if I have to race in the rain, I'll do it. But yeah, I just kind of realized like, well, I can just pre-ride the climb on Saturday. And so we actually kind of had a lazy day after I dropped Kyle off, and we just hung out around the house. But then we had to book it over there because we needed to be there like before it got dark.
Yeah.
And everything.
I mean, it was nice that you took the day off because, I mean, I work from home anyway, so it didn't really affect my schedule, but we were able to leave earlier than when you would have gotten off work.
Yeah.
And so
and I got to have just a bonus kind of lazy day playing video games and hanging out.
Big rest day before the race weekend.
Yeah.
But yeah, the driving to Nagano, so we went from like Ishikawa to Nagano on toll roads in the beginning part, and that part wasn't that scenic just because like you were saying it was like an hour and a half of just tunnels.
And you look on the map, and from the map you think, oh, this is gonna be really pretty because you go by Shirakawa-go and through, you know, really pretty looking places.
But
because
it's all the mountains, they just blast through. But once you get to Takayama, you get off the toll road and it opens up, and you are in the countryside. And
at that point, you're in Gifu Prefecture, and it's really pretty.
It's really
over
nice.
There.
I would drive that again. It is kind of funny because the distance that we covered in an hour on the toll roads was the same distance that we covered in 3 hours through the countryside.
Yeah, because in Gifu, and you get to Takayama, and the race was in Nagano, like just across the Hida Mountains. And so the only real options are you drive to Takayama and then you drive up and over one of the mountain passes, or I guess you could drive all the way along the coast up to Joetsu and then drive down like the center of Nagano. But that would just take forever. Yeah. So
speaking of like small towns and stuff, you were telling me all about the Japanese geographical units.
Yeah, this is
getting
just
really
like,
into it.
Well, so because we were talking about it, so we were going over there and we were going to Kiso, but Kiso is a district and it's also a town, and they share the exact same name and they're in the exact same place. And so when you look on the map, there are two Kisos. So it got me curious, and it's kind of the same with a lot of place names in Japan. I think in particular there's someone in Hokkaido that's really bad, where there's one area and they share like the name, but it's in 5 different places.
I guess that's when like the suffixes are important, like Ken for prefecture. And
so that's kind of what I started
city.
looking into. And same thing actually for Ishikawa. There's Ishikawa-shi, there's an Ishikawa city. And
Ishikawa.
then we're in Ishikawa-ken. No, Ishikawa City is it's like north of Tokyo.
Oh. I mean, I guess in North America, like New York would be an example.
Yeah,
kind
but it seems a little more
example.
extreme here because it's very common. But anyway, we were looking into it. So we live in Ishikawa Prefecture, which is basically the state. If you're an American, this is the state that you live in. And then within the prefecture, there's a district, which, again, if you're an American, is similar to a county. So it's kind of the next level down from state. You go to county. And that's where it gets a little confusing, because then you have cities, towns, and villages. And a city is not part of a district. a city is its own thing. So, for example, Kanazawa is its own thing. It's not in a district. It's just the city of Kanazawa. We're here. We're in the town of Uchinada, but it's Kohoku-gun. So I think that's our district.
Yeah.
I think we're in Kohoku district in the town of Uchinada. But so it just gets a little confusing. And then technically, according to what I was looking at, city, towns, and villages are all on the same level.
Oh.
In terms of like governmental thing. But cities, they get further split down into you can be a designated city, which means you have a population of over 500. Then you can be a core city.
500,000.
Yeah, 500,000, sorry. Then you can be a core city. And they used to have a thing called special cities, which were over 200,000 people. So, for example, I think Kanazawa is a core city. It's not a designated city, but I think it's a core city. And that basically just means it has extra governmental things that it can do. Like the government of Kanazawa can control extra things that the prefecture doesn't have to worry about. So I think if you're in a district, the prefecture kind of controls it. But if you're in a city, it might be like the mayor of your city is kind of in charge.
Sense, I guess. But then Tokyo is like on a whole other level.
Yeah, so that's what I've always been confused about, because for a while I thought Tokyo was in Saitama Prefecture, but Tokyo is Tokyo-to, and Tokyo-to means Tokyo Metropolis, and metropolis is similar to prefecture. So
Are there
Tokyo
any
is
other
its
like
own
toes?
thing.
Like, is it Osaka-to? I don't
I
think
don't
it is.
think so. Osaka, I think, is in Osaka Prefecture.
Yeah,
which is confusing.
True. So Tokyo is just very, very special.
Yeah, and instead, of course, within the city, you don't have additional cities and towns or districts, so they made wards. So that's why in Tokyo you have wards.
Yeah, and wards are kind of like boroughs in New York.
Yeah,
bit.
but they have,
Like
I think, the
neighborhood
same
kind of things.
They have the equivalent of governing rights that cities have in Japan. So, yeah, it just all gets a little confusing because sometimes you're reading addresses and it just like keeps going. Or like I was trying to explain to you, we were going to Kiso and Nagano.
In Kiso.
But we weren't going to Kiso.
Oh, yeah.
We were going to Kiso district, but not Kiso city or Kiso town. And then also it's interesting because villages are disappearing. So village is like the smallest, as small as you go. And there are actually 13 prefectures that no longer have villages.
Wow.
Because the villages either died or they...
Like got absorbed.
Yeah, they got absorbed and they became a town, or they got absorbed into like a city. Like I think Matsumoto, south of us, I think is a bunch of like towns that combined to become a city.
Interesting.
So it's kind of spread out.
I mean, that makes sense to like share your resources, I guess, but it is kind of a unfortunate result of a declining population currently.
Yeah.
And not only declining, but like this is happening with lots of other countries too, but where people will move into the cities and things.
Yeah. So they're leaving behind the villages, which makes sense why. So on our drive home, skipping ahead and then we'll go back. On our drive home, we stopped at this little grocery store because we had missed all the convenience stores and we wanted some snacks. And the man at the counter was just this old man. He was super friendly. And he asked us where we had been. And I said Otaki, which is a village.
Yeah, which is where the race was.
Yeah, and when I said Otaki, we were in the middle of nowhere in a grocery store. And when I said Otaki, he looked at me and was like, "Oh, like Inaka."
Yeah,
like super rural.
Yeah, like rural town.
And I was like, dude, where? Like a man just pulled up outside your grocery store on his like tractor, smoking a cigarette to get a coffee.
It was
out
just
of the vending
like
machine.
good old Tuxedo back home, the little town I'm from.
So it really cracked me up because he heard Otaki and he was like, "Dang, you guys were like out there." And so yeah, Otaki is a village, which might be the only village we've been to. Maybe in like
maybe
Noto.
the only designated village.
Yeah, maybe in Noto we like rode through. No, because Ishikawa is one of the prefectures that no longer has a village.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess all the coastal towns in Ishikawa have kind of banded together to share resources and designations like that. But
yeah, or something like that. So we're one of the prefectures, that doesn't have a village, but Nagano actually has quite a few villages, and we saw billboards for it. And also there's a Wikipedia page that tells you the most beautiful villages in Japan, which I guess now it makes a little more sense.
A billboard that...
Yeah, remember it said something about like Japan's most beautiful villages?
Oh.
I think it was advertising that there really aren't that many villages left.
It was beautiful.
And Nagano apparently has a bunch of them.
Okay, so why did we go to Nagano? Why did we travel out to the Inaka?
So we were in the middle of nowhere because I signed up to do a hill climb, which is a popular style of bike racing in Japan and kind of Southeast Asia. And I know that they have them in the UK and some other parts of Europe. But it's not really popular in America, but it kind of is exactly what it sounds like. You go ride your bike really hard up a hill.
I mean, it's like a time trial, like an uphill time trial, but very long.
Yeah, so at first I thought it was just a time trial, but it's actually a mass start event. So you start in your category
pretty different
with everyone. Where normally a time trial, you start one at a time. So maybe like in 2 to 3 minute increments, or maybe even down to a minute. You'll start and then go, and then the next person goes. This, we all started at the same time. And yeah, it's just really cool. And it was really long. The KOM for the climb is like right at an hour. And so if you were finishing in like an hour to an hour and 10, that was a good time.
Yeah, when we rode up at Casually to pre-ride, it took us 2 hours. So it's a long like piece of road that just keeps going up.
Yeah, I'm gonna forget. It gains something in elevation like 1,200 or 300 meters, and this kind of like 4,000 feet.
Yeah. Because we started around like 3,000 feet
and
elevation.
We climbed up to just over 7,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I signed up to do it because back home I really like climbing. It's kind of one of my favorite parts of cycling. I've always enjoyed riding in the mountains and just kind of spending time in the mountains and climbing. And I think I'm fairly good at it. So I signed up to do it because I was like, well, that sounds fun. And then it was just a unique experience. I've never done something like that before.
And when we were looking at where the race was being held, we were like, wow, this is a really pretty area.
Super beautiful. And also as a perk, it's actually my team's home area. So actually on my jersey, it says Kiso because the race director lives in a village near Kiso.
Yeah, so that was really cool.
Yeah, so I signed up for it, and that's why we were going over there.
Yeah, so the Saturday we pre-rode it, and I was glad because we went at my pace because you were just not trying to get really tired the day before.
Yeah.
And so it was really enjoyable because we could just go really chill up, and we stopped a lot because I wanted to take pictures of like everything. We saw one of the best parts of the whole climb was this waterfall that we saw. And it was like 40 meters high or something. Or no, it's the Otaki waterfall, and it's 30 meters high.
It's big, and it's one of the ones that monks use for their aesthetics, or what aesthetics. What do you call it? It's like the body training.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what the word is for that.
Yeah, that's what there's that little changing area. That's where the monks, like, I guess, change, and then they go stand underneath the waterfall.
I did read, like, on the plaque that there had been I guess somebody who was following the religion and trying to purify themselves at the waterfall, but it was for 75 to 100 days. And I don't know if they just stood under the waterfall for that long.
I don't think so. I think that was like they go up to
the
mountains for 75 to 100 days. Okay. I don't know how long they stay under the waterfall.
I was picturing someone just being like immersed in water, like, you know, standing under the waterfall for that long, just trying to like reach enlightenment or something.
I mean, that would be really impressive if that's the case, but
yeah. So we're talking about these religious practices because the hill climb was actually along Mount Ontake, which is it's a sacred mountain, and it's an active volcano. And we didn't know that it was an active volcano until
so I didn't know until I finished the race. And then I was standing there with a teammate.
I'm laughing because I'm glad that we knew after we had come down from.
Yeah, I mean, when we went up there, I did notice that it was so striking, and there were parts that clearly looked like there had been really big landslides and stuff. But yeah, we got up there and we finished the race, and I was like chatting with the teammate, and he was like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Not that long ago, that thing erupted."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, yeah, like there was an eruption and it killed like 60 people.
Yeah.
And
So we
like,
looked
what?
this up because we were like, surely not. But yeah, on September 27th in 2014, kind of a freak eruption. It was, no one knew what was happening. It killed 63 people. And I mean, you might be thinking like, oh, well, weren't those people warned, or like maybe they just didn't listen? But no, so there's 110 active volcanoes in Japan, and 47 of them are monitored closely by scientists because they're, deemed to be high risk.
Mm-hmm.
And Mount Ontake is one of them. And scientists have 12 seismometers on the volcano to measure any kind of trembling or any, movement. And they also have 5 GPS instruments and a tilt meter. I don't know what that is, but just to measure all these different things. And 11 minutes before the eruption, the seismometers showed a volcanic tremor, but the GPS and the tilt meter didn't show any changes. And so, yeah, they had no warning. And so there were people hiking. There's people that were living close enough that got covered in, the ash cloud.
Yeah.
But I was reading that it was the volcanic magma or whatever heated up groundwater. And
so I think
pressure, steam
I think it's
burst.
on Mount Ontake is maybe Japan's highest lake. So there's still, I forget, there's a term for it where they're like craters, but they fill with water. And so you can still hike up there, and there are like 5 of them or something. There are big lakes up there that get filled up. And so I guess just when the magma hit the water, it like vaporizes. So it causes this kind of like, drastic like explosion as the like pressure like goes off.
Yes, that was kind of a tragic recent event that I'm glad that we didn't know about. But
yeah, and then he was trying to explain to me too. He was saying
your teammate.
Yeah, he was trying to explain to me like that people pray at the mountain, but he was kind of like doing a dramatic, like we both started like motioning, like when you're doing like
bowing
worship.
down.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, like worship, and he was like, oh yeah, he's like God's in the mountain, and he's like people worship it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, but not just like Shintoism or like Shugendo, that what you talked about
which was
the
one
other
of my
day.
words the other
day. It's more than that, because we looked it up later, and there actually is a religion that is all about Ontake.
Mount Ontake.
Like they worship the mountain.
Yeah.
And it's a blend of Shintoism, esoteric Buddhism, and ancient shamanic lore is what the article said. Yeah, it kind of
sounds like the same idea that kicked off like Shugendo, but this is like just for Mount Ontake. So it's pretty interesting that
it said it was established in 1882, and so they say that it's the resting place for the soul after death, and that your soul returns to that mountain. And so the shrine is like up there at the summit.
Yeah.
And you cleanse yourself at that waterfall we were talking about. You cleanse yourself on the way up. And so it shares a lot of similarities, but it's kind of like a whole separate flavor of religion.
Which cracked me up, because when we were finishing the race and we were finally able to ride back down the mountain, my teammate was like, okay, he's like, we go down now. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm like, so we can ride at the bottom. He's like, yeah. He's like, we go underworld. And one of my other teammates heard it, and he thought it was so funny. He started laughing, and he was like, hell? And the guy was like, no. He's like, we just down.
He just meant like ground level or something.
Yeah, but he called it underworld. And we had just been talking about like the religion of the mountains. So I was like, whoa.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it was really funny.
It's the 14th highest mountain in Japan.
And second highest volcano.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's second only to Mount Fuji.
Yeah, and we had no idea.
Yeah.
We were just riding bikes over there.
Well, so when you were riding up the next day in the actual race, would you have changed your like strategy at all or anything? What was your like goal for the event?
So it's interesting because it's a mass start event, so you kind of have to make some strategy based on the people you're around, because in cycling, drafting is a big deal. And on steeper slopes, drafting is not a big deal. But it wasn't incredibly steep. And there were some sections actually that kind of like flattened out around like hairpin turns. You would hit like a little flat spot before going around another hairpin. But basically, I just decided I was going to ride with the group until I noticed like my heart rate was starting to climb more. And then I decided like, well, I'll sit up and I'll ride at my own pace. And I'm pretty good at pacing myself. I think that's like one of my strengths with cycling, which is maybe why I like climbing, because you just pace yourself up the climb.
Yeah, but it's easy to get like peer pressure in a mass start race where you want to like stick with everybody else.
I guess so, but I did really good. So I rode with the group until it like essentially split in half. And then once it had split in half, I noticed my heart rate was starting to go up. So I just kind of like sat up and rode at my own pace, which my goal was kind of like, I guess in cycling terms, like right around my threshold, like just below. So I have a power meter on my bike and I was wearing a heart rate monitor. So I kind of just like paid attention to my numbers and then rode at my pace. And it was really good because, I mean, pretty immediately I started catching like a lot of people that they were just trying to stick with the lead group, and then they would explode. And so it was kind of fun going up the climb because the whole way I would like catch, like one or two people and then catch a few more people. And then I just kept going.
And that's motivating, especially like at the end when you can start like picking people off.
Yeah, that was the only part I had to make sure I didn't ride too hard because I would see the people up ahead and I would like notice I would start riding a little bit harder because I was like, oh, I'm going to catch them. But then I had to remind myself, I was like, I'm only like 30 minutes in this climb. I have like another 30 minutes to catch them. So so it was like, really fun experience just giving that a try and seeing if it paid off. And I think in the end it did because I ended up finishing 6th.
Yeah, which is great. Top 10.
Yeah. Which that was kind of like, I was like, man, if I have like a really good day, I think I could be top 10. And I was like, if I have a super day, like maybe I can be top 5, top 3, which I ended up being 1 minute away from 3rd. So I think knowing that's the only thing I would change a little bit. I think I could have ridden a little bit harder just over the course of the climb.
Yeah.
And because I finished and honestly,
but it's
I
such
wasn't
a like
like
hairpin
cracked.
line, to finish, to like, you don't want to go out too hard because once you've surpassed your limit, it's hard to like rein it back in.
Yeah. And especially, I mean, because at one point, we hit, 6,000 feet and we still had 1,000 feet to climb. And at that point, like altitude, I think really is kind of,
I guess it
starting
starts
to affect
affecting you like minorly around like 6,000 feet. But yeah.
Yeah. And it still had a while to go. So that was like really fun. And it went by like way faster than I thought because I reached the ski like slope at the top so fast. And I was like, oh, like moving.
Yeah.
So it was like a fun experience. And it was kind of fun because one guy that I passed managed to stick on my wheel and he followed me from probably about like 4 miles to go until about a mile to go. And then there were 2 people ahead and I was like, okay, I can definitely catch those people. So I like rode harder. So I rode above my pace that I wanted to ride, but I caught those 2 guys. And then next thing I know, I was like in a little group of like 4 people, which I didn't really expect to have like a sprint finish at 7,000 feet after an hour of climbing. So, but yeah, I think one guy attacked like pretty early on and he rode away, but I finished 2nd out of that bunch. So at one point I was kind of like racing for 5th, but I had no idea because when I got to the top, I thought I saw like 7 other dudes up there already. So I was like, oh man, like maybe I got top 10, but I didn't know the results until like later that night. And one of my teammates was like, here it is. Like you got 6th. He was like, great job.
It's a great surprise for sure. Well, while you were racing, it was a lot of fun.
I would definitely do it again.
Well, good. While you were racing, I was not riding up any hills. I was just riding around the Kiso Valley kind of area. I guess I did ride up a small hill. I rode past the ryokan we'll talk about in a second. And then to get up to the top of this like small hill. And it actually was the site of the Tokyo University's Kiso Observatory, like for stars and astronomy, which is really cool. I took a couple astronomy classes in college and they had nothing to do with my major. They were like my gen ed science, but I loved them. And so I would love to like see an astronomy observatory again. But I guess that just kind of gives you an image of how like natural and remote that area is because that's where they chose to put that observatory up on that mountain.
And I guess like as an example of that, so Otaki, that village, 95% of their land is forest and 86% of that is national forest.
That's cool.
It's pretty much just all trees.
It was really beautiful.
There. It was cool.
But I guess like the Kiso, the district, or Kiso Fukushima is the halfway point on the Nakasendo, which that's one of the 5, the Edo 5 routes. So it links Tokyo to Kyoto in, I guess, the old Edo period days when you would have to run mail and messages.
Yeah, you had to like send a message, or I guess you were like shipping some goods or something like.
So like a trade route or the postal route. There were 5 of them, and there are 2 main ones really, from the 2 most famous ones that are from Tokyo to Kyoto, and Nakasendo is the one that we were on, and then the other one is the Tokaido route, which goes to the same place, but it's actually along the coast instead. But yeah, this spot was the halfway point on the Nakasendo, which is really neat. Cool and very historical. And that route is 500 kilometers. So that would be a really cool, like, future note for bike packing idea or something. I'm sure people do that often. Yeah. That would be really beautiful.
Yeah, because we actually didn't get to see, like, one of the historic post town areas. So I definitely want to go back.
Yeah, we didn't
check that out.
See a lot of the Kiso Valley just because we were there for that race. So
yeah.
I rode around and it was really beautiful, but there was so much that we didn't get to see. So we stayed in, do you want to talk about, I guess, like where we stayed that night before the race?
Yeah, so this is something that I have like a bit of a fascination with because I love the idea of ryokans. Like, I think they're super cool.
And a ryokan is just the Japanese word for a guest house.
Yeah, it's basically like a traditional inn. Like, think bed and breakfast, but Japanese style.
Yeah.
And so I really like the idea of those because that book that I really like to read, The Roads to Sada, when he's walking across Japan, that's what he's staying in most of the time. And I love onsen. So I found out recently, actually last year after we moved here, there's this thing, it's called like the Secret Onsen Society of Japan, which it's not a huge secret. But basically they like pride themselves on being remote, and they pride themselves on carrying on like the tradition of like onsen ryokan bath houses.
Like a traditional bathing experience.
Yeah.
And natural water.
Yeah. And yeah, so it's just like they have a website and you can find the different ones. And there's actually one in Ishikawa that I want to go to. Maybe we'll ride our bike there this summer. But yeah, it's just like a really neat thing. And there was one that is part of that society in Kiso.
And we stayed, it's called the Kamanuma Onsen Daikisen. And I was kind of hoping that, like, it would be a little more secret. Like, when you come in, they're like, oh, here's, like, please stamp the guest book. Or,
so they have a passport.
Oh, do
they? But I think you have to book it through the Secret Onsen Society website.
Oh, we definitely need to get a passport.
And so if you do it through the website, I think they will stamp your passport. And it's like, they have, like, a silly rewards thing. I think once you do, like, 10 of them, you get, like, a free night somewhere.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Kiso region, their hot springs are known for apparently the rare hydrogen carbonate hot spring. And so it has like little fine bubbles and stuff. And
they say it's good for everything.
Yeah, they really do. You read the list
really,
and you're like, okay, I mean, it sounds kind of like witch doctory, but I mean, it does make you feel really good. And there are like healing benefits to bathing, but it said that this type of hot spring, I don't know how scientific it is, but it's supposed to dilate your capillaries and lower your blood pressure.
Yeah, they said it's good for athletes.
Oh, yeah, we really stayed there for the marginal gains.
Yeah.
But their website for the one we stayed at says that their hot water is weakly acidic, has strong bactericidal activity, and contains a large amount of calcium and magnesium.
I also think you might have said this in that long list of things. I also read that it has iron in it.
Yeah,
they said it's good for anemia.
I read that it has iron in it. Well, and that only makes sense because you can drink it. And this is the first one that we've stayed at where you can drink. Okay, you don't drink the bath water, like what you're bathing in.
I think maybe some like super traditional Japanese bros do, but I wouldn't.
But from the same source before it's like in the bath and like touching people, they'll collect it and you can drink that water. And that's the first time that I've been to a place that there's, that they're advertising, oh, drink the spring water too.
And they sell it by the liter.
Yeah, kind of expensive.
I know. But when we first walked in, they had like a jug of it, like in the entryway, and you could just pour yourself a glass.
So after we bathed, I came out and I was like, oh, I'll drink some of the like nice, refreshing water. And I don't know, I guess I was expecting it to be like tonic water or something. Maybe not as sweet, but like kind of bitter. But it was like very first of all, when you pour it out of the tank, it's not clear. It was like not clear.
Well, even in the
but
bath,
it was kind of like
murky looking.
Murky, yeah. And so I was like, well, I mean, it's natural, and then it's slightly bubbly because of the like hydrogen carbonate
or whatever.
Yeah, and so that kind of caught me off guard. And then it does have kind of like an iron, like a metallic taste to it.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, but all of that combined,
Drinking
I was
the
like,
blood of the mountain.
Yeah, you are.
Ontake. Slurping it down.
Lifeblood of the mountain.
Worshipping.
It was kind of intense. I had to kind of like...
You had your glass, and I had one sip, but I was just thinking about that race, and I was like, what if I like...
Yeah, what if it messes
drink
up your
this water
insides?
And then, yeah, like it makes me like... hurts my little tummy, and then I'm trying to do that race, and I'm like, oh god, like I drank the bath water.
I got worried that maybe that wasn't what you were supposed to drink, like maybe that was something else, and I was just like poured myself a big glass of like,
nah, there was someone else
whatever
drinking it.
Because one time I went to an onsen and I couldn't read the kanji, and I took a cup out of the dirty cups.
Yeah, use the dirty cups.
And some old lady was trying to warn me, and I was like, oh no, this is my cup. And no, she
was like, no, I just drank out of that one.
Yeah, she was
like, I
telling me
literally
it's dirty.
just put that down. Yeah. And he was like, no, I'm good.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, embarrassing. But yeah, I had to kind of like choke down the rest of the water because there were other people in the room, and I didn't want to be like rude and like not finish the special
I guess
water.
That would bring us to one point that it was really cool, and I'm glad we stayed there, and it was a lot of fun, but we didn't really take advantage of kind of like the ryokan experience because we were there. We're kind of in and out just to do the race. And also after we checked in,
we had to leave before breakfast.
I know. And after we checked in, we drove around because we wanted to see parts of like the region. So we drove around to do some sightseeing. And then when we got back, it was kind of late. And so we just took a shower, and then
we did.
had the
we
race,
took a bath, of course, in the
we did
spring,
the hot spring thing.
Yeah, we didn't like interact with any other guests really, or
we didn't eat dinner
meals
with everyone, and we didn't like hang out in the common room. And we woke up early the next morning to leave for the race. So I think that's like, I would do that differently. Like maybe the next time we stay in a secret onsen society club room, I would want it to be
that's
like
the whole
more
point of the
relaxed.
trip.
Yeah. Like maybe do a bike ride that day, but like, just kind of relax more at the onsen.
Yeah. Well, so the reason we weren't at dinner, we were driving around, is because we were trying to see the gorge, the Nezamenotoko Gorge. Yeah. So we drove over to Agematsu, which is a town that's in that same district. And Nezamenotoko Gorge, I'm probably not saying that correctly, but it's where the Kiso River kind of cuts through the rocks, and it's really stunning because the rocks are so smooth and huge. And then the second reason why it's so
these
beautiful,
giant granite boulders.
Yeah. The other reason why it's so beautiful is because it has this turquoise water, like bright blue. And I was just blown away.
Like it's the kind of blue that you see in a photo, but you're pretty sure that someone photoshopped it.
Yeah, like turned up the saturation really high.
Like you see it and you're like, that's really not real. Like water doesn't look like that. Like it's cool that they took the photo, and I'm sure it's kind of blue, but there's definitely some editing going on. But here it was that blue. So
well, and
was
so
crazy.
that gorge is in Agematsu, and that town
hosts, is it a town or a village?
I think it's a town. I don't know. But they host a forest bathing event every year, and I'm fascinated by that. We should definitely go. I mean, which
I don't think I brought any of my forest bathing books. I have like 3 of them. Remember, because I think you got me one, and then I think your family got me one.
Yeah. Well, and
so I had like 2 of the same book.
But it's a really cool, just the idea of forest bathing is really cool. And then
it's kind of like nature therapy.
Yeah.
Like spend time in nature to heal yourself. And yeah, I
guess it's nothing really mind blowing, but
it's cool.
Just the fact that people will reserve time and kind of like honor that as important thing.
A big thing in Japan, because there are like therapy centers that concentrate on the concept of forest bathing, which really
and neat. So the Akasawa Forest is in Agematsu, and they host an event every year, and they have hosted one every year since 1982, and they host one in the spring and in the fall, and you can pay a small fee for like a guided tour or do your own thing.
You'd have to book it ahead.
That's true.
They do one 2
but
times
they have
a year,
a website, and I want to see the hinoki cypress trees that are some of them are 300 years old.
Yeah, so I went down a rabbit hole with those trees one day, and I was texting Annie because they're really cool. And we didn't know. We went to a shrine when we rode on our way, when we rode to Fukui Prefecture on a bike trip. We stopped at the shrine because Annie saw this really big tree.
Yeah.
And so we like whipped it around, and she said, we have to go see that.
And this is in the Kaga region in Ishikawa.
Yeah, so we saw this tree, and we were like, oh, that's really cool. Like, super neat. Like, let's take some pictures with him. And then
Yeah, he was really big.
it was
and
cool
beautiful.
seeing him, and then we got to hit the road. Well, I was like reading about trees because when Kyle was here, he was asking me what the trees were, the evergreens. And one is hinoki, which is Japanese cypress, and one is Japanese cedar. But the one in the temple is like one of the top 30 oldest trees in the world, and the emperors visited him and all this stuff. And so we were
cool.
reading about it, and we were like, oh. Like,
We had no idea. We met
I know.
tree royalty.
yeah, he was a celebrity in the tree
Yeah.
world.
He was
But,
very impressive.
Yeah, he was cool.
A very wise old man.
But they have a bunch of them here in Kiso.
Yeah.
And they even have a specific Kiso cypress, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah, and so there's lots of things we want to go back to. But we kept going, like, past Agematsu that same night, and we got to the Atera
Well, I
Valley.
can see in my notes that Agematsu is a town.
Yeah, well, I was right. And so the Atera Valley, we went there because they have that really bright blue sapphire water. And I was trying to look up why it's so blue, and I couldn't really find any good reason.
Yeah, I
But-
don't know if it's just like it's snow melt plus it's groundwater. It's like really pure for some reason. But that was like stunningly blue water.
And I guess you told me later, we parked like on the side of the road. There was a pull-off, but apparently you're not supposed to park on the side of the road. There were no signs that said that.
Yeah, I was reading that apparently sometimes they even shut that road to traffic. Like you can't drive through it, and you have to hike up and see everything.
Yeah, I was surprised it wasn't crowded.
So I think it was open now because you can drive up and you can go to like the campsite, and there's something else up there. But yeah, I don't think you're supposed to pull over on the side of the road and park.
Oops.
But we didn't know that. So there's a parking lot at the bottom by one of the main bridges before the road up through the Atera Valley. But we drove up a little bit and pulled over and parked. But so we were not good.
Yeah. But that area was like a major logging area for the cypress. And also there's a shrine to celebrate the god of Mount Atera nearby.
Yeah.
There's gods all over those mountains.
I know. And that one was like, I felt kind of bad because it was something about how like people worked in the lumber camps, but they were kind of like migrant workers. So they would come from all over Nagano, and they would go to work in the lumber camps, and they wouldn't see their families. And they kind of spent time in the like lumber, like logging world. So that was apparently like a monthly thing they would do, is they had like a really big festival to celebrate that mountain and the god in the mountain. And that was like apparently the thing they look forward to. Because they didn't have like their families or anything.
Well, the Otaki Forest Railway train that like they use to transport the lumber, it's still like sort of in operation, but not like they're no longer doing the same logging, industry in that way. But it was originally built in 1916, and then they've kind of repurposed it for sightseeing. So I would definitely want to go ride that train.
Yeah, and we didn't go up like very far through the Atera Valley. We kind of saw like one super scenic spot, and it was getting dark, so we kind of spent all our time there. But when I was reading on the kind of tourism website, there are a bunch of different areas all along the river that you can go see. And the one that I thought was funniest was the fox in the Tanuki pool. Named after, of course, an animal, but Tanuki and foxes are kind of shapeshifters, and apparently they would go to that pool at night to check on their disguises to make sure that their like disguises
Make sure
were
they
still
looked good still.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of like little magical stories and stuff like that. It felt like a very magical place. So, and it was just one stop on the Nakasendo, like that whole route. And so I'm sure that there's some really cool, like other historical spots that are nearby and we haven't even been close to
Yeah,
yet.
if you look at Google Maps, there's so many scenic spots that you can click on in that whole area. So definitely, I want to go back and I want to do some camping because there are also campsites all through there.
Yeah.
And I bet they're really cool.
Yeah. That was our weekend. And pretty much after your race, I'd finished my ride and you finished your race, and we headed back that day, and that way we could get back home before dark. So
yeah, which was really nice. So it was good to get back after kind of an action-packed weekend and have an evening here at home to unpack and
yeah, and you
settle
don't have another bike race for a little while, I guess.
No, not until I think it's like potentially June 20th or something like that. So we have a few free weekends ahead.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, if I get like picked to do that bike race or whatever. So yeah.
But overall, really nice. Do you have anything else you want to?
No, I don't think so. Other than Nagano Prefecture might be my favorite place I've been so far in Japan. So if you're coming to Japan and you want to do something, not even necessarily like off the beaten path, because I think a lot of people go there for like skiing and other forms of tourism, but it's not on like the golden route or anything. And maybe because it's in the middle, people tend to like skip over it. But if you're into some cool nature,
You're into nature.
yeah, and you want to see some like sweet countryside places, like you should go to Nagano.
Yeah.
You might need to rent a car, but
yeah, that is kind of a barrier, because if we had come like during our initial trip to Japan, we wouldn't really have been able to enjoy it the same way.
You would have had to invest so much time in figuring out public transportation and then spending so much time on buses, because there were buses that went through the Ontake area in Kiso district, but yeah, I think you would have spent so much time like waiting on buses or like using buses.
But it's not out of the question, because if you want to go to a remote place like that, all you have to do is get your international driver's license before you come to Japan, and then you can rent a car.
Or if you're just lucky and you're from a country that has an agreement with Japan, you can just use your license.
That's lucky.
If you're an American and you're not from one of the few states with that agreement, then yeah, you need your international driver
But it's
permit.
good for a whole year, so which is what we're on right now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you definitely can drive if you're just visiting. You just have to get it before you arrive. You have to bring your permit with you.
Yeah.
But do you have a word of the week?
I do. And it is Shukyo.
Okay.
Do you remember that one? Hopefully I'm saying it right.
Neil?
No. Religion?
Oh.
Right?
I don't know. It's your word.
It's what my teammate was telling me.
Okay.
And we were trying to look up to see what it was, because he was telling me about Mount Ontake. He was like explaining to me like, oh, kept saying like Shukyo. And I was thinking like shu like last and kyo like today, like last today. Like I couldn't make it make sense in my head. And he was like, no, Shukyo. And he was like, like pray. He's like, they pray and the mountain has God. And I was like, oh man, like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he was like, what do you do when you pray? And I was like, worship. And he was like, yeah, worship.
Yeah. Well, I've looked it up, and it is Shukyo. And
Oh, thank goodness.
But it means all of those things: religion, religious affiliation, belief, faith, creed, religious activity. So I'm sure that there's nuances that,
like depending on context of what you're talking about. But yeah, so Shukyo, religion.
Oh, it's 2 in a row. 'Cause your other one was the mountain religion.
Yeah, Shigendo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
what's yours?
Mine is monkeys. So monkeys in Japanese is saru, and
Saru, which I think is a katakana foreign borrowed word.
Is it?
I saw it on some signs, and I'm pretty sure on the signs it was in katakana and said saru. So I wonder where they got it from.
I don't think it's borrowed, because there's a kanji for it.
Oh, okay.
But they
I
might have
definitely
just
saw
been,
it written in katakana.
They might have just been writing it in katakana.
Maybe,
I don't know why. But yeah, we saw our first wild monkeys.
Yeah. It was an experience. We saw a lot of them.
They are kind of scary.
Yeah.
We've seen them before in like quasi wild setting. When we went to Kyoto, they have like this
Monkey
forest park, and the monkeys are kind of, there are like keepers though that make sure that they're like within the bounds
and they tell
of
you
the
stuff
forest.
like don't look them in the eyes, and
so
sometimes they chase the monkeys, but I don't know why. Remember that one time they like took off down the mountain?
The monkey probably like had something it wasn't supposed to have.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on here?
But these are like truly just, it's just wild. Like instead of squirrels, there's just monkeys.
Yeah, so we kept talking about like, you can't just leave your window open. Because if you left your window open, like a monkey might come in. And so imagine
I
coming back
guess.
to your house and realizing that you had left the window open. I'd be like,
But
dang,
I
now we
don't
have to
think-
check the house for monkeys.
Okay, but like in America, you wouldn't just leave the window open and expect a squirrel to come in.
Yeah, but squirrels aren't smart. Monkeys know you're in there eating good. Those monkeys are like watching you through the
In
kitchen
your
window.
mind, the monkeys are just masterminds.
Yeah, the monkeys are like, I know that guy has some ice cream.
Yeah.
And the second he leaves the window open, I'm going to go in there and get the ice cream.
Well, the monkeys were all over the road. Like we saw them
Yeah.
when we were driving. We saw
and
them.
there were baby monkeys out.
Yeah, when I was biking, like a literal pack of monkeys crossed the road, and one of them was this big mom monkey, and she had a little baby monkey like latched
Frightening.
onto her underneath, and she was walking, and the baby was holding on. And part of me like really wanted to stop and take a picture, and then the other part of me was like, do not engage, like do not make eye contact.
Yeah, she would attack you.
I don't know how dangerous they are, but they scare me, and I don't
We
want
did
to
see a
find
few
out.
signs that did say like Abonai, like danger
Do
monkey.
not mess
Yeah,
with the
like-
monkeys. I'm sure. I mean, they're wild animals. You don't just like, you don't touch any
Yeah.
wild animal. But I don't know how. Like,
And
I don't
their
want to.
teeth.
I don't want to get close to them. I just want to take a picture. But I don't know how aggressive they are, so I don't want to find out.
Because they're agile.
Yeah,
They can
hop
jump
around.
pretty far.
I was impressed though. They were bigger than I thought, and just more of them than I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like a pretty rare occurrence, but the first ones we saw, I was like, oh man, that's pretty special. I can't believe we got to see the wild monkey.
Yeah, we saw them every day. We were there
and then,
multiple
and
times
then we
a day.
just kept seeing them.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, it's really monkey time over
So
here.
if you want to see a monkey, come to Nagano
yeah.
Prefecture, because I haven't seen one anywhere outside besides in the Kyoto designated area. We said I haven't seen one at all in Ishikawa, and of course you wouldn't
You
see
see
them in the
signs for them
cities.
sometimes. It's like on the road. It's like, watch out for monkeys. But we
Only
never saw
when
a
you
monkey.
get like into the mountains, but I've never seen
Yeah.
a monkey
Yeah.
till now.
But now we have. Saw those monkeys.
Yeah, so Saru monkeys.
Saru. Maybe there's a Saru Shukyo.
Maybe
Some monkey worship.
that's what I'm trying to get into.
Wow.
No, not really. They kind of scare me.
Yeah. They're frightening.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening this week to all of our rambling.
Yeah.
And I promise I will post pictures this time because they're too pretty to not post.
Yeah, because I took the drone.
Yes. Oh, and we found a drone.
Yeah, so for the first time, I actually did find a drone that someone else had
Like it
crashed
crashed.
in the Atera Valley.
Yeah.
And it was like pinned up against some rocks. So if you've crashed a drone in the Atera Valley, I have it.
Yeah, but
and the
it
memory
is-
card's still in it. So we're going to see if we can get some stuff off
some
it.
hidden treasure in there.
Yeah.
It was definitely submerged and everything's in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, it was like in the river and it got
So,
washed down. And yeah.
It probably doesn't have anything on it, but I'm really hoping that we have like this time capsule of like
Yeah.
someone's trip.
I want to see
and-
like a crash.
Okay.
I hope they were recording.
Yeah.
Well, so if you lost a drone, send us an email. If you didn't lose a drone,
Send
you
us
can
an
still
email.
send us an email.
Yeah, ramblingramsbottoms@gmail.com. And our website, the same, ramblingramsbottoms.com.
And our new YouTube, also the exact same.
Yeah, which we're recording right now if you're watching that, in case you're a visual podcast watcher.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.